Good afternoon, students. So today I'm going to go over Chapter 2 of the Betty Azar Maintaining and Understanding English Grammar. So in Chapter 1, I did a summary of all of the verb tenses that you have. The simple tenses like simple present, simple past, simple future, which is I eat, I ate, I will eat. So those are all completed actions in the present, past, and future. Then you have the progressive tenses, present progressive, I am eating, past progressive, I was eating, and future progressive, I will be eating. Then you've got the perfect tenses where you have two actions in which you have I have been talking, that is present, no, I have talked, present perfect. Then you have past perfect, where you have two actions in the past. I had brushed my teeth before I went to bed. And then you have the future perfect. I will have brushed my teeth before I will go to bed tomorrow. Then you have the future perfect progressive. I have been talking for 2 hours. And if it happened yesterday, past perfect progressive. I had been talking yesterday, and then if it happens tomorrow, the future perfect progressive, I will have been talking tomorrow. And so that the perfect tenses always deal with two actions, while the simple and progressive tenses deal with one action. So I'm going to go over in a lot more detail all of these different verb tenses. So here, let me share my screen. Without further ado, let's go over the different verb tenses. So here we are screen sharing. And so here you have past progressive. I was walking down the street. So let's go back. Let's go to the very top of Chapter 2. And then I am going to go over all of Chapter 2 with you. So let me go to the top of that's Chapter 1. That's the end of Chapter 1. There we go. So in Chapter 2, we're going to go over the present, the past, simple, and progressive. So this is a pretty easy chapter. So the simple present is something that's happening right now. It's a completed action. And it's a habitual action that happens every day. So water consists of hydrogen and oxygen. The average person breathes 21,600 times a day. The world is round. The simple present says that something was true in the past, is true in the present, and will be true in the future. It expresses general statements of fact and timeless truths. Something that's habitual, something that happens all the time, is the simple present. I study for 2 hours every night. I get up at 7 every morning. He always eats a sandwich for lunch. So the simple present is used to express habitual or everyday activities. Present progressive. So the simple present is a completed action, whereas the present progressive, it's still something happening right now, but it's continuous. John is sleeping right now. I need an umbrella because it is raining. The students are now sitting at their desks right now. I am taking 5 courses this semester. John is trying to improve his work habits. Susan is writing another book this year. So the present progressive expresses an activity that is in progress at the moment of speaking. It is a temporary activity that began in the past, is continuing at present, and will probably end at some point in the future. Often the present progressive is of a general nature, something generally in progress this week, this month, this year. So Susan, I think I already read this one already. So what is the difference between the simple present and the present progressive? Well, the simple present means that it's a series of completed actions, whereas present progressive means that the action is still in progress and still happening. So that's the difference between the simple present and the present progressive. So let's do an exercise. Diane can't come to the house because she is washing her hair. So here you have an example of the present progressive. Diane is washing her hair every day or washes her hair every day. So Diane washes simple present because it's something that happens all the time. So simple present, Diane washes her hair every day. Kathy usually sits in the front row during class. Also, it's a habit, so simple present. But today, she is sitting in the last row. Okay, something that's unusual. Then it becomes present progressive. Please be quiet. I am trying to concentrate. In other words, right now, at this moment, I am trying to concentrate. Do you lock the door to your apartment when you leave? Once again, it's some kind of habit. So if it's a habit, it's simple present. I wrote to my friend last week. She hasn't answered my letter yet. I'm still waiting for a reply. So that means that it's something that's still happening right now. After 6 days of rain, I'm glad that the sun is shining again today. So that means that every single day it rained, and now today it's the sun is shining. So once again, it's not when something is not a habit and it's happening right now, then it's present progressive. If it's something like the sun rises every day, it rains every day, then it's simple present when it's something that is a habit. Look, it's snowing. Okay, so that means, hey, at this very moment, it's snowing. So it's not some kind of habit. It is beautiful. This is the first time I've ever seen snow. It doesn't snow in my country. In other words, normally, on a habitual basis, it does not snow in her country. Close your eyes and now listen carefully. What am I doing? In other words, what is she doing right now at this moment in time? So when it's something that's happening at this moment in time, it's present progressive. If it's some kind of habit, then it's simple present. Aha! You're rubbing your eyes, you're rubbing your hands together. So right now, she's rubbing her hands together. You rub the top of your desk with your hand. Close, but not exactly right. Try it again. So when it's some kind of habit, then we use present, simple present. Let's see. What are stative verbs? Now, most verbs in English is an action verb, like I run, I talk, I sleep. But a stative verb states a mental condition. It states a description. It's not an action verb. Okay, so that's the difference between, it's not something that you're, so an action verb would be, the food tastes good. So some English verbs have stative meanings. They're not action verbs. These stative verbs describe states, conditions, or situations that exist. When verbs have stative meanings, they are usually not used in progressive tenses. So if I state I love hamburgers, okay? Love is a stative verb, at least love in this case. I like John. You can't say I am liking John. Or the chef is in his kitchen. So a verb such as taste has a stative meaning, but also a progressive meaning. So some verbs can be both stative or action. So if I use, in the case of taste, it can be both, okay? If I say that the food tastes good, okay, that's using taste as a stative verb. That's similar to saying the food is very good. In other words, you're expressing a condition. You're describing a condition. So the food tastes good. It's similar to the food seems good. The food is good. All of those describe a condition. And when you have a stative verb, we don't put the stative verb in progressive tense. And so verbs like taste and like have stative meaning, but it can also be used as an action verb. So that's why state and taste and like are exceptions. Here are some common verbs that are stative verbs: know, realize, understand, recognize, believe, feel, suppose, think, imagine, doubt, remember, forget, want, need, desire, mean. Those all describe a mental state, so that is a stative verb. I know math. I believe in God. I doubt that my brother is ever right in anything. I need more education. So all of these are stative verbs. If you are stating an emotional state, love, like, appreciate, please, prefer, hate, dislike, fear. I fear snakes. I fear insects. Don't envy your neighbors. Mind, care, astonish, amaze, surprise. Possession are also stative verbs. Possess, have, own, belong. Sense perceptions, taste, smell, hear, feel, see. Those are also stative verbs. And other existing states like, wow, Roger seems really handsome. So seem, look, appear, sound, resemble, look like. He looks like $1,000,000. So that's also a stative verb because you're stating you're stating a condition. Cost, owe, weigh, equal, be, exist, matter, consist of, contain, and include. So all of these are stative verbs. So here, when you have a stative verb, usually you cannot use it in a progressive tense, because if you use it in the progressive tense, then it's not a stative verb anymore. It becomes an action verb. That's the difference. Okay. So here, let's see the difference. These flowers smell good. That's a stative verb because it's describing a condition. Hiroki is smelling the flowers. Oh, now I changed it into an action verb. So as soon as you change the stative verb into a ing, it suddenly it's no longer a stative verb. It becomes an action verb. So that's the difference in meaning between a stative verb and an action verb. I think Robert is a kind man. Okay, that's a stative verb because that's considered a condition. I am thinking about this grammar. Okay, suddenly it's now an action verb because you're doing the action of thinking. Okay, I am thinking about this grammar. I see a butterfly. That's a stative verb. Do you see it too? Because that's a state of condition, just like I am happy. Jane is seeing a doctor about her headaches. And as soon as I make it a progressive, then it becomes an action. Kathy looks cold. Ooh, that's stative, okay? Then Tina is looking out her window. Okay, she's looking out her window. So that is the difference in meaning between a stative verb and an action verb. Stative verbs are not action verbs. That's the difference. I'm not going to go over all of them, but you get the idea. Here are some more verbs. Now when you have the be verb, now normally when you have an adjective, you would say things like a red car, a black bean, a yellow dress. Usually the adjective comes before the noun, but the only exception is when you're using the be verb in a sentence plus an adjective. So if I have a subject plus subject plus be verb and then plus adjective, John is handsome. That's the only time when John, that's the noun, is being described as handsome. But notice how the adjective in that sentence comes after the noun. And that only happens when you're using the be verb is. John is handsome. So, and that's also a stative verb because you're stating a condition. Okay? So that's the only time you're going to have the adjective coming after the noun. So here you have Anne is sick today. Alex is nervous. Tom is tall and handsome. Jack doesn't feel well. He is being foolish. Sue is being very quiet. So these are all stative verbs because they're talking about a condition. Okay, it's not an action verb. Sometimes be plus an adjective is used in the progressive. It is used in the progressive when it describes temporary, in progress behavior. Remember, when you have something progressive, it's something that's happening right at that moment, whereas simple present happens all the time. Remember when we did the difference between John looks at the window and John looks happy, that's stative. John is looking out the window. Okay, that's progressive. So as soon as we add ing to it, then that means, as soon as it's progressive, means it's not a habit. So adjectives that can be used with am, is, are, being are bad, careful, cruel, fair, foolish, funny, generous. John is bad. John is careful. You can say John is bad, in other words, bad behavior, or John is being bad. So if I say John is being bad, he's being bad right this second, right now. It's not something that happens every day. It's just this particular moment. John is being bad. But if I say John is bad, that's like the simple present. That means that on a regular basis, he is bad. Okay? That's used as a stative verb because you're stating a condition. So when you state a condition, that's similar to the simple present where you're talking about something that happens all the time. All the time, John is a bad student, or Robert is very cruel. But, however, Mrs. Duncan is always a fair teacher. She always grades fairly. So that means that when it's something that happens on a regular basis, okay, we use, when it's something that happens on a regular basis, you don't use the being. So John is bad means something that happens on a regular basis. John is being bad, in other words, present perfect. So whenever you use present perfect, it's all you've got to remember is whenever you use present perfect, it's always something that just happens right now, and it's not a habit. That's all you got to remember. That's how it differentiates. That's how present perfect differentiates itself from all other tenses because it's just something that's happening now. Yeah. So here's the difference between simple present and present progressive. Once again, the simple present is something that happens all the time, while the present progressive is something that's just now. It's not something that happens every day. It's just like a fluke, okay? I can't afford this ring. It costs too much. That means on a regular basis, simple present, it costs too much. Oh, look! It's beginning to rain. It hasn't rained in California in months. Now it's starting to rain. See? Present progressive. You're surprised. Yeah, it's used a lot in surprises because it's not something habitual. You're like, oh. Okay, so you can think of present progressive as if you want. Okay? And whereas simple present is, oh yeah, it rains every day. Okay, who cares? Okay? That's how people react in New York. In New York, think of New York as simple present. Every day it rains in New York or Seattle, and so people in New York, they're actually sick of rain. They want the sunshine. So, but out here in California, it rarely rains. So when something like, oh my God, it's raining, okay? So that's when we use simple present when it's not some kind of habit. So I'm not going to go over all of this, but you get the idea. Whenever something is a habit, that's when we use the simple present. When we have regular and irregular verbs, when we want to say something in the past, like the simple past, in a regular verb, we use ed, like I walked, he talked. Anything with ed is a regular verb. However, an irregular verb means that if you want to conjugate that verb in the past, and it doesn't take ed, like break, broke, broken, hear, heard, heard. Those are irregular verbs because when you put those verbs into the past, it doesn't take ed, okay? And so you have English verbs have 4 principal parts. You have the simple form, you have the simple past, the past participle, and the present participle. So the simple form is break, come, find, hit, swim. That's also like the infinitive, okay? The infinitive, to break, to come, to find, to hit, to swim. These are all irregular verbs because you don't say, yesterday I braked the glass. You don't say, yesterday I comed to the store, right? So it's irregular, so therefore you have break, and broken is always used when you have, okay? A past participle, simple past means it broke, came, found, hit, swam. Past participle, any kind of participle, the word means that you use the word to have in front of the verb, okay? That makes it a participle. So he has broken the glass. He had broken the glass. He has been breaking the glass. Okay, that's present participle. So participle simply means the have, okay? So I have broken, I have come, I have found, I have hit, I have swum. Yesterday, I swam in the ocean. He had swum. So when you put have, then it becomes like, then it changes again. So you have to memorize break, broke, broken. So broke is yesterday I broke my ankle. So break, broke, broken, came, come, find, found, hit. That means that yesterday the car hit the tree. He has hit a home run. So hit remains the same, whether it has a have or no have. And so I remember memorizing the irregular verb list. I think it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade that the teachers would make you memorize. Let me take a look. Hold on. We are still, all of these verbs are regular verbs. Regular verbs, okay, here, regular verbs all take ed when placed in the past. Sobbed, graded, asked, helped, watched. Okay, so this is all very simple, right? And I will go over this later. Aha, this is where everyone messes up. I'm not going to read out all of this, okay? But this is the irregular verb list you have to memorize, okay? And so when I was teaching ESL, we used to do song chants, arise, arose, arisen, be, was, were, been. And the students would come up with songs or rap songs, or you can look that up on YouTube. There are songs, irregular verb songs, that go with this list. But basically, you have to memorize this list because we cannot say, he arised. We don't say, I bared. We don't say, I becomed. Instead, we say become, became, become, begin, began, begun, bend, bent, bent, bet, bid, bid, and that sort of thing. So you have to memorize these verbs, and you can find these chant songs on YouTube, irregular verb songs. That will definitely help you memorize all of it. And I remember having to memorize all of this in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, except they made it a game, okay? So you're going to have to memorize, and there's some differences between British English and American English. So and then you can practice. Did you drink some coffee before class? Yes, I drank coffee before class. Did you fall on the ice? Yes, I fell on the ice. Did you fly to the city yesterday? Yes, I flew to this city, and stuff like that. So here you can practice with your classmates how to conjugate irregular verbs into the simple past. So that's something you would have to, if I have a group of students, like 30 students, then this activity is a lot of fun. But talking to myself in this video, going over it by myself, it's not very interesting for you to listen to. Okay, so this is why I recommend that you find a study partner in the study room, and then you can then practice with somebody else all of these questions. And the more you practice the grammar, the better you become at it. Okay, these verbs make a lot of trouble for people, okay? When you have the verb raise, raised, raised, this is actually a regular verb, set, 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 lay, laid, laid. These are all transitive verbs. That means that these verbs take a direct object. Tom raised his hand. So subject, Tom, raised is a verb, his hand is the direct object. A transitive verb always needs a direct object, okay? Raised, set, lay, laid, laid. An intransitive verb means that there is no direct object. An intransitive verb never takes a direct object. So here you would say, the sun rises in the east. So here you have a subject, rises is the verb, in the east is a prepositional phrase. Sit, sat, sat. I sit in the front row. And so you would say, I sit in a chair. Okay, so that is a preposition. A prepositional phrase is a phrase that shows time and place. And so students get these confused. So intransitive, rise, rose, risen, sit, sat, sat, lie, lay, laying. Whereas a transitive is lay, laid, laid. Okay, so here I am laying the book on the desk. He is lying on his bed. So when you go to sleep and you're lying down, that's intransitive. If I'm going to put my pen onto the desk, I am laying the pen on the desk. That's a transitive verb. Okay, so that's how you remember. I'm going to set this pen onto the desk. Transitive verb. I sit in my seat. Intransitive verb. So set, set is transitive, while sit, sat is intransitive. So you have to know the difference. So let's play with this. The student raised or rose his hand in class. So we know that raise, raised, raised, that's the transitive verb, so the correct answer is raised. Hot air raises? Hot air raises what? You know, raises always needs a direct object. Hot air rises. So remember, rise, rose, risen, no direct object. And sat in a chair because she was tired. Sat is the intransitive verb. I sat your dictionary on the table a few minutes ago. It's set, okay? Because set always takes a direct object. Hens lie eggs? Lay eggs. Because lay, laid, laid are intransitive. So that's why it's very important for you to memorize this chart so you don't get confused doing stuff like this, because you have no idea how many times I've had to correct essays with these kind of mistakes over and over again. So that's why it's so important for you to memorize the difference between a transitive verb that takes a direct object and an intransitive verb that does not take a direct object. Simple past is pretty easy. That's just one complete action in the past. Yesterday I walked to school. John lived in Paris for 10 years. I bought a new car 3 days ago. Rita stood under a tree when it began to rain. When Mrs. Chu heard a strange noise, she got up to investigate. When I dropped my cup, the coffee spilled on my lap. So if a sentence contains when and has the simple past in both clauses, the action in the when clause happens first. So here, when the rain began, she stood under a tree. So here, the rain happened first, then she stood under the tree. You can use progressive tenses with all ways to complain. Mary always leaves for school at 7:45 p.m. So in sentences referring to present time, Usually the simple present is used with always. The sun always rises at 6:45 this time of the year. Mary is always leaving her dirty socks on the floor for me to pick up. Who does she think I am? Her maid? Okay, so you could use always to complain. I'm always constantly picking up Mary's dirty socks. He didn't like having Sam for my roommate last year. He was always leaving his dirty clothes on the floor. So I remember having a hallmate. She was always leaving her underwear, dirty underwear, on the floor. That was so disgusting. Yeah, going to her dorm room was like, ugh. So you could use always to complain. And this is more for ESL students. I think that Americans, they know how to complain. This is not something that's really hard for Americans. Okay, when I say Americans, I mean native speakers of English. It's pretty obvious. Okay, using expressions of place with progressive verbs. What is Kay doing? She is studying in her room. Where is Kay? She's in her room studying. What was Jack doing when you arrived? He was reading a book in bed. So when you're using a progressive tense, you could use it to indicate time and place. So I'm at my house talking to you on Zoom. Robert is at his office working on his math equations. So you can use the present perfect and then indicate where a person is. That's it. Okay, so that's it for this particular chapter 2 of this book, in which I went over the difference between present, the simple present, the simple past, and then the progressive. The simple present, the simple present progressive, simple present, present progressive, stative verbs, as well as, and then next chapter we're going to go over perfect and perfect progressive tenses. This gets harder because everyone understands how to do simple tenses like I eat, I ate, I will eat, simple tenses. I am eating, I was eating, I will be eating, progressive tenses. Everyone seems to have no problem with that. In general, it's when we get to the perfect tenses. That's when you have plus a verb. Have plus a verb, those are perfect tenses. And that's where my ESL students anyway start to go, huh? Yeah, it's the second half, because in conversational English, my students have no trouble with the first 6 tenses. It's the last 6 tenses of English that everyone goes, huh? Like that. That's the expression I get. As soon as I start teaching this portion of verb tenses, then everyone's eyes glaze over like that. A whole room, that's what I miss about teaching face-to-face. I do miss that aspect of seeing everyone's eyes glaze over, because it's just so funny, to see it at the same time. Huh? Like that. Anyway, that's how I know I had to slow down. But with Zoom, I don't get to see the faces anymore, so I do miss that. Anyway, so if you have any questions, feel free to email me. So I'm done with chapter 2 of this book.